You bought the spray, the expensive one, the one with the bright label that promised to end your pest problem for good. And the aphids came back anyway. 2 spoons, that is all it takes. 2 level spoons of a white powder that has been sitting in the laundry aisle for 100 years. Mixed the right way, placed in the right spot, it does what the $40 bottle could not. In Japan, gardeners have leaned on this same mineral for generations. No annual contract, no fresh bottle every spring. Just a quiet, cheap, repeatable method that wipes out the pests eating your garden alive. Here is the claim, stated plainly. The reason your garden keeps getting attacked is not that you use the wrong brand. It is that you have been treating the symptom and feeding the cause. The Japanese approach does the opposite. It removes the conditions the pests need to survive. And it does it with something already in your home. There is a specific method behind this, a way of preparing and placing this powder that comes out of old household practice in rural Japan, a practice that was nearly buried when the bottled sprays took over. And if your garden is already crawling right now, already chewed and curling and sticky, this works for you too. You do not need to start over. You can start this weekend. Let me show you exactly how. First, you have to understand what is really eating your garden, because almost everyone gets this wrong. And getting it wrong is what keeps you spending. When you see holes in your leaves, when you see that sticky film on the stems, when you see the ants marching up your tomato plants in a neat little line, your first thought is simple. Kill the bug you can see. So you reach for the spray and you hit the leaf, and for a few days it looks better. Then it comes back worse. Here is why. The bug you can see is not the problem, it is the messenger. Most garden pests that ruin a season are not random visitors. They are farmed. Ants actually herd aphids the way a rancher herds cattle. The aphids suck sugar out of your plants and excrete a sweet liquid called honeydew. The ants drink that honeydew. So the ants protect the aphids. They carry them from plant to plant. They fight off the ladybugs that would eat them. They build a whole little economy on the back of your vegetables. So when you spray the leaf, you kill a few aphids on the surface. But the ant colony underground is untouched. And the colony simply restocks the herd. Within a week, you are back where you started, except now you have also killed the ladybugs, the lacewings, and the tiny wasps that were quietly working for free on your side. That is the trap. The surface spray attacks your allies and leaves the source untouched. And the source is almost always underground. A nest, a colony, a network of tunnels you never see. The visible damage on your leaves is the last 10% of the problem. The other 90% is below the soil, protected, breeding, and waiting. So if you only ever treat what you can see, you will be treating forever. Every spring, every summer, every paycheck. That is not a garden problem. That is a subscription you never agreed to sign. Now, here's where the Japanese approach turns everything around. Instead of killing the bug on the leaf, you target the colony at the root. And you do it with a mineral, not a poison cocktail. That mineral is borax, sodium borate. The same white powder people have used for laundry and cleaning for over a century. Here is the mechanism. In plain language, because the mechanism is the whole secret, borax contains boron. In tiny amounts, boron is actually a nutrient that plants need. But for an insect with a hard outer shell and a simple digestive system, borax works very differently. When an ant or a roach or a beetle eats it in the right dose, the boron disrupts its digestion and its nervous system from the inside. It does not drop dead on the spot. And that delay is the genius of it, because the ant does not die at the food source. It carries the bait back. It shares it. Ants feed each other mouth to mouth, a behavior scientists call trophallaxis. One worker brings the laced food home and passes it through the entire colony, all the way to the queen. You never have to find the nest. The ants find it for you, and they carry the solution straight to the heart of the problem. Kill the worker, you waste an afternoon. Reach the queen, you end the season. That is the difference between spraying a leaf and dismantling a colony. Now, the dose matters more than almost anything else, and this is where most people online get it completely wrong. So let me say something clearly about borax recipes, because the internet is full of bad advice on this one. People read one blog post, grab the box, and dump a heaping pile of borax into a cup of water. They think more powder means more dead bugs. It is the opposite. If the bait is too strong, the worker ant dies before it gets home. A dead ant carries nothing. The colony never gets the dose. And you sit there wondering why the line of ants is right back the next morning. The correct ratio is gentle on purpose. You want the ants to live long enough to share the meal. Think of it as a slow delivery, not an explosion. Here's the simple version you can mix at your kitchen counter. Take 1 cup of warm water, add half a cup of sugar, because the sugar is the lure that the ants cannot resist. Then add just 2 level teaspoons of borax. Stir until it dissolves completely. That ratio, roughly 2 to 3% borax, is the sweet spot. Strong enough to work, weak enough to travel. Soak a few cotton balls in that liquid. Place them on small lids or jar caps near the ant trails, near the base of the plants under attack, near the cracks where you see them coming and going. Then walk away. Do not disturb them. Let the ants do their work for 3 to 5 days. You will see something strange and satisfying. At first, the activity around the bait increases. More ants, not fewer. That is good. That means they have found it and they are carrying it home. Then, around day 4 or 5, the trails thin out. By the end of the week, the line is gone. And the aphids, with no ants left to protect them, get cleaned up by the ladybugs and the rain. You did not poison your whole garden. You removed one prop holding up the whole pest economy, and the rest collapsed on its own. Now I want to talk to you about something almost no one mentions, because it explains why this method specifically belongs to the Japanese household and not the American garage. In Japan, there's a deep cultural habit of using one humble material in many quiet ways. The word for this kind of resourceful, waste-nothing thinking shows up everywhere in old rural life. A single box of mineral powder in a Japanese farmhouse was not a pest product. It was a cleaning agent, a preservative, a polish, and yes, a quiet guardian of the kitchen garden. Borax, and the boron salts close to it, were known as tools for keeping insects out of stored grain and out of the wooden posts of the house long before there was a spray aisle to walk down. That is the contrast that matters. The American approach buys a different specialized product for every single problem. 1 bottle for ants, 1 for roaches, 1 for the lawn, 1 for the fence. Each one used once or twice, then forgotten under the sink, half full, going to waste. The Japanese approach takes one cheap, stable, shelf-forever material and asks, what can this honestly do? And the answer turned out to be quite a lot. This is where the idea of matanai comes in. It is a word you may have heard people translate it as a sense of regret over waste, but it runs deeper than that. It is the feeling that every useful thing carries a duty not to be squandered. A household, guided by matanai, does not throw money at a shelf of single-use sprays. It learns the full range of what one honest material can do, and it uses that material with care and precision. That mindset is exactly why a box of borax in a Japanese home outperforms a cabinet full of brand-name bottles in an American one. If this way of thinking speaks to you the idea that one humble material, understood deeply, outperforms a whole shelf of expensive products, then you will find a great deal more where this came from. The book Ancient Roots goes much further into these forgotten household methods, tracing the principles behind them and laying out dozens of practical applications that have quietly survived for generations. It is the kind of resource you read once and keep going back to, because the knowledge compounds. You can find it linked in the description below. But let me give you the warning that goes with this, because borax is powerful and respect matters. Let me say something clearly about scattering borax powder loose across your garden soil, because this is the mistake that turns a good method into a disaster. Dry borax, dumped directly onto your beds, does not stay where you put it. It dissolves and spreads through the soil with the next rain. And while plants need a trace of boron, too much boron is toxic to them. It is one of the few nutrients where the line between helpful and harmful is razor thin. Overapply it, and you can scorch your roots, yellow your leaves, and leave a patch of ground where nothing wants to grow for a long, long time, so do not broadcast it. Do not sprinkle it like salt across the whole bed. Do not pour the concentrated solution at the base of every plant. The method that works is contained. The bait stays on a lid, or a cotton ball, or inside a small covered station. The ants come to it. It does not soak your soil. That containment is not a small detail. It is the entire difference between a tool and a poison. And here is one more place people go wrong. They put the borax bait out, see ants on it the next morning, panic, and throw it away thinking it failed. And honestly, just skip that instinct. Seeing more ants is the method working, not failing. The slow bait needs days, not hours. Patience does what panic cannot. Now, maybe you are listening to all this and thinking, that is fine for someone with a big backyard and raised beds, but I have a balcony, or a few pots by the kitchen window, or a single tomato plant in a bucket that something is destroying. This next part is for you specifically, because the smaller your space, the better this method works. In a container garden, the pest problem is concentrated and the colony is usually small. You do not need stations all over a yard. You need one. Take a single small jar lid, soak 1 cotton ball in that same sugar and borax solution, tuck it into the corner of the pot, or right where the balcony floor meets the wall, wherever you see the ants traveling. That is it. 1 station, 1 pot, 1 weekend. For roaches, which love the warm crack behind an outdoor sink or a shed, there is an even simpler dry version that stays contained. Mix equal parts borax and powdered sugar. Place a thin line of it deep inside a crack or under an appliance where children and pets absolutely cannot reach. The roaches eat it, carry it back, and groom it off their bodies, spreading it through the harborage. Again, the dose is gentle on purpose, and the placement is hidden and contained. You do not need land. You do not need tools. You do not need to spend a single extra dollar beyond a box you can buy for a few dollars and use for years. A balcony gardener with 1 lid and 1 cotton ball is using the exact same principle as a farmer with a full field. That is the beauty of working with the mechanism instead of against it. And once the ants are gone, you will notice the aphids fade faster than you expect. Because here is the chain almost no one sees. Remove the ants, and the natural predators come back to work. Ladybugs return, lacewings return, the tiny parasitic wasps return. Your garden was always trying to defend itself. The ants were jamming the defense. Take away the jammer, and the system heals on its own. That is the part that separates this from a product. A product gives you a result for a week. A principle gives you a garden that starts protecting itself. Now, let me give you the deeper layer, because this is where it stops being a trick and becomes a way of thinking. There is a concept in Japanese garden care that has no clean English word. The closest is the idea of tending the conditions rather than fighting the symptoms. The Japanese gardener does not wage war on every insect. He asks why the insect is thriving here, and he changes the conditions so it has no reason to stay. Pests are not an enemy to be defeated bottle by bottle. They are a signal that something in the balance is off. This is the same thinking behind Tsuchizukuri, the practice of building living soil. A garden with strong balanced soil and a healthy web of insect life does not get overrun, because there is always something eating the thing that eats your plants. The borax method fits inside this philosophy perfectly. It is not a weapon aimed at all life. It is a precise nudge that removes one disruptive player so the natural balance can return. The American approach, shaped by companies that profit from your repeat purchase, treats your garden as a battlefield that must be sprayed into submission every season. The Japanese approach, shaped by households that simply wanted to eat from the same plot for 50 years, treats your garden as a system to be kept in balance with the smallest possible touch. One sells you a war, the other teaches you peace. And peace, it turns out, is cheaper. Treat the cause and the symptom fades. Fight the symptom and the cause grows stronger. Now I want to give you the finale, the part that was very nearly lost. Because the borax bait alone is good, but there is a refinement to it that came out of old Japanese household practice, and almost no modern guide includes it. In the rural farmhouses of regions like Tohoku in the cold north of Japan, families could not run to a store for a new product every time something went wrong. They preserved what worked and passed it down. And one of the things they understood, long before there was a word like trophallaxis to describe it, was timing. They knew that bait set out at the wrong time of day failed, and bait set at the right time emptied a nest. Here's the refinement. Set your borax bait out in the cool of the early evening, not the heat of midday. In the heat, ants are searching mostly for water, not food, and a sweet bait gets ignored or even abandoned. As the day cools, the colony shifts to foraging for food to carry home for the night. That is when a sugar lure becomes irresistible. The same cotton ball that did nothing at noon gets swarmed at dusk. There is a second piece of this old timing wisdom. The farmhouses paired the sweet bait with a protein bait at the same time, because the colony's appetite changes through the season. In spring, when the queen is laying and the colony is growing, the ants crave protein. In the heat of summer and into fall, they crave sugar and carbohydrates. So the old practice was to set out 2 stations side by side. One sweet, the sugar and borax solution. One greasy, a dab of peanut butter, or a little bacon fat mixed with a pinch of borax. The colony chooses what it craves that week, and either way it carries the dose home. Set bait at dusk, offer both the sweet and the savory. That single adjustment, remembered in old farmhouse kitchens and forgotten almost everywhere else, is the difference between a bait the ants ignore and a bait that ends the colony in days. The knowledge existed. Then the bottled sprays arrived, loud and convenient, and they pushed the quiet mineral method into the back of the cupboard. The companies had no reason to sell you a $4 box that lasts 5 years. So the method faded from the mainstream and survived only where people still valued not wasting. Now you have it back. Let me put the cost in front of you plainly, because this is where the whole picture snaps into focus. A box of borax costs around $5 to $7. That box contains enough to make bait stations for several seasons. Add a bag of sugar you already have and a few cotton balls. Call it generously $1 a year in actual material used. So the Japanese method runs you about $1 per year, and it reaches the queen and it leaves your beneficial insects alive. Now compare that to the mainstream alternative. A single bottle of brand name ant and pest spray runs $15 to $30. Most gardeners buy 3 or 4 of those across a season because the spray only hits the surface and the colony keeps restocking. That is $60 to $100 a year, every year, with no end in sight, while it also kills the ladybugs and lacewings that were working for you for free. So you pay more to make your garden weaker. $1 a year, that ends the problem, or $80 a year that feeds it. Once you see the difference, you cannot unsee it. Here is your simple routine to start this weekend. On a cool evening, mix 1 cup of warm water, half a cup of sugar, and 2 level teaspoons of borax. Soak a few cotton balls. Set them on small lids along the ant trails and at the base of the plants under attack. Set a second small station nearby with a dab of peanut butter and a pinch of borax. Leave them undisturbed. Check them in the evenings, not the mornings. Refresh the cotton when it dries out. Within 5 to 7 days, the trails go quiet, then do nothing. Let the ladybugs return and finish the aphids for you. Repeat only if you see a new trail form. That is the entire system. A few minutes once with a box that costs less than a sandwich. The deeper lesson here is not really about ants or aphids or borax. It is about a way of thinking. The modern habit is to meet every problem with a new purchase, a stronger chemical, a bigger fight, and to measure effort by how much you spend and how hard you spray. The older way, the Japanese way, measures wisdom by how little you need to use to set things right. It asks you to understand the system before you attack it. It trusts that a garden, given balance, will defend itself. It treats restraint not as weakness, but as the highest form of skill. A spray treats your garden as an enemy to be beaten back every year. A bait, placed with understanding, treats your garden as a system to be brought back into balance once. One keeps you dependent, the other sets you free. The companies profit from the war, the household profits from the peace. Once you see the difference, you really cannot unsee it. So here's what I want you to tell me. When you set out your stations this weekend, are you going to try the sweet bait, the savory peanut butter bait, or both side by side the way the old farmhouses did? Drop a comment and tell me which one your ants went for first, because the answer tells you what season your colony thinks it is in, and that is the kind of thing the people in this little community love to compare. And if recovering this kind of buried practical knowledge is what you are here for, the kind of method that costs almost nothing and quietly works the way it did for generations, then come along with us. We are slowly putting these forgotten home and garden methods back into ordinary hands one at a time. Because there is one more thing the old farmhouses knew that almost no one talks about now. There is a single common kitchen ingredient, cheaper than borax, that you can pour around the base of a plant to stop slugs and cutworms from ever climbing it, and it works through a mechanism so simple you will wonder why anyone ever bought the blue pellets. That is what we are uncovering next. Treat the cause, not the symptom. We will see you there. Before you go, let me leave you with 2 small refinements that make this method even more reliable, because the details are where most people fail. First, water matters. Set out a separate shallow dish of plain water a short distance from your bait. In the dry weeks of summer, thirsty ants will sometimes ignore even the best sugar lure because what they need most is moisture. Give them clean water nearby, and they relax, and then they take the sweet bait the way they were always meant to. It sounds backward, it works. Second, never crush the ants on the trail while the bait is working. Every gardener feels the urge to wipe out the line marching across the patio. Resist it. A crushed ant releases an alarm signal that scatters the colony and breaks the steady chain carrying your bait home. Leave the trail alone. Let it flow. The quiet patience that feels like doing nothing is exactly what dismantles the nest. Mark your calendar for a single check 2 weeks later. If a new trail appears, refresh one station and walk away again. That is all. No spraying schedule, no annual bottle, just one cheap box, a few minutes in the cool evening, and a garden that slowly remembers how to defend itself. Watch the trail. Trust the wait. That is the whole secret.